What's the most random fact you know? Story 1. The guy who started Match.com made his wife, family, friends, and employees sign up to increase traffic to the site. His wife later divorced him for someone she met on Match.com. Story 2. The Argonaut octopus detaches his male body part and throws it at the female to mate. The male body part then swims after her, while the male goes off to regrow a new one. Story 3. Per my grandfather, in rural Iran, about 100 to 200 years ago, they had a scorpion problem. They would sneak into the house and you had to shake everything out before you used it, shoes, pictures, etc. People would routinely submerge each leg of their beds in large bowls of water. Because scorpions could climb, but they couldn't swim. Occasionally, someone would wake to find a dead scorpion in one of the bowls. Story 4. It's impossible for chinchillas to get fleas. Because their fur is so dense, any fleas would literally suffocate inside of it. Chinchillas have the second densest fur of any animal on Earth, the first being the river otter. Story 5. You can shed your entire uterine lining at once during your period. It's called a decidual cast. It comes out formed to the shape of your uterus in one fleshy, raw meat-looking mass. Story 6. Annie Frid Sune Lyngstad, a founding member of Swedish pop band ABBA, is the product of a Nazi breeding program where German men were sent to Norway to impregnate Norwegian women. She was one of the children that was resulted. Story 7. In the 80s, there was a TV show called Airwolf. It was about a top-secret helicopter. It was stolen by a pilot played by Jan Michael Vincent named Stringfellow Hawk. He would do missions for the people he stole it from, with the agreement that would look for his brother that was a POW in Vietnam. His brother, to my recollection, was never actually shown in the show, and his name was Singin' Hawk. This is the most worthless piece of information I know. Story 8. When publishing the Batman comics that lead to the passing of the second Robin, Jason Todd, DC left the fate of the young side kick up to the readers as a marketing tactic. The last page of the issue before the conclusion of the story arc ended with a cliffhanger of the boy Wonder in imminent mortal danger, with Batman racing to get to him. And on the next page, they included 2 numbers that readers could call to decide whether Batman would get to him in time. Calling one number was a vote to save Robin. The other was a vote to eliminate him off. The readers voted for his passing, and to the surprise of many, DC went through with it. Story 9. Not really a single fact, but just the concept of tautological place names. Names for various features that are just the word for that type of feature in a different language. Some examples: Gobi Desert, Desert Desert, Lake Michigan, Lake Large Lake, Mississippi River, Big River River, the La Brea Tar Pits, the Tar Pits. One of my favorites is the Los Angeles Angels baseball team, or the Angels Angels. Story 10. The Fortnite distant gun sounds are sampled from the movie Princess Mononoke at around the 12831 stamp of the movie. Story 11. There are more trees, about 3 trillion on Earth, than stars, 400 billion, in the Milky Way galaxy. Story 12. 50 of the sun's mass is focused in just 2 of its volume, and if you put the planet Saturn into a bag to keep it all together, it would float in water, assuming a suitable body of water could be found. Story 13. One of the only predator of the Canadian moose is the orca whale. Whilst there have been no sightings of a whale attacking a moose, there have been moose carcasses torn up in the ocean, and it is the only logical conclusion. Also, moose can swim. Story 14. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal in the world, with a flight speed of roughly 105 meters per hour. Its main form of offense is punching things while falling really fast. IRL Falcon Punch. Story 15. Probably everything I know about platypuses, or the fact that barnacles have the largest male body part to body size ratio of the entire animal kingdom. Story 16. I once read that the skin on your lips is the same skin on your butthole, and honestly, I overthink it. Every time. Story 17. Octopuses have 9 brains. Each tentacle gets its own one, and then there's a 9th brain that coordinates the other 8. Story 18. That the high five was started accidentally during an LA Dodgers game in 1977, when a player raised his hand before another player crossed home plate. The runner slapped the raised hand without any thought. It became a Dodgers ritual that permeated into popular culture. Story 19. Galapagos tortoises pick their alpha by having a contest of stretching their necks as far and long as possible, because the ones with the longest necks are the oldest and have the most experience. Story 20. Schizophrenia can lie dormant in your body. It can be triggered by certain things. For example, if someone has done a specific substances and they say, "I haven't stopped tripping since," they're no longer tripping. Their schizophrenia was activated. Story 21. Blueberries need 120 frost-free days. Had to memorize that for a middle school geography test. It's been such invaluable knowledge every day of my life since. Story 22. Only female mosquitoes bite. They are attracted to people with type O blood and those who release more carbon dioxide. The reason a mosquito bite itches is because they inject their saliva to clot the blood when they're done. Story 23. Spiral galaxies are on average 100,000 light-years across and 100 light-years thick, which is 1,000.1 ratio, making them thinner than a crepe proportionally. Story 24. Celsius and Fahrenheit are the 2 most popular scales for measuring temperature. 40 is the only place on each scale where the numbers are equal. Story 25. The Venus flytrap only natively grows in one part of the world, and that location is in the United States. It's a narrow strip of land in the coastal part of the Carolinas. Story 26. I watch QI and have lots of random facts that I don't know I know until it comes up randomly. The one I remember best is that in Pennsylvania, when cars were first introduced, they disliked them, and if horses were too frightened to pass by one in the street, the car's owner would have to disassemble the car and hide it in the shrubbery. Story 27. Phone keypads and calculator keypads are upside down from each other because 10 key operators were too fast for the new fangled touch tone system. Story 28. The blue whale is the largest creature to have ever existed. Male blue whale male body part is over 6'2" meters long. Story 29. Before penicillin was discovered, malaria was sometimes used to cure syphilis. They knew that a high fever early in syphilis infection could eliminate the otherwise incurable disease. Malaria caused a high fever and could be treated with quinine. And even if the treatment failed and the fever eliminate you, dying of fever over a day or two was a cleaner passing than letting syphilis ravage your body and mind for months. This technique won the 1927 Nobel Prize in Medicine. Story 30. The Titanic was carrying a large shipment of mayonnaise that was intended for Mexico. After dropping passengers off at New York, she was going to continue south. After the Titanic sank, mayonnaise frothed around on the surface, making quite the mess. It was visible in floating masses for months afterwards. The people of Mexico wanted to share their condolences and declared a day to commemorate the loss. Cinco de Mayo. Story 31. According to what I just read in the popular, i.e. credible, press, is that they have just recorded humpback whales humping, and it's 2 males. Story 32. All mammals over 6-12 pounds, no matter how much bigger they are, take the same amount of time to urinate and empty the bladder. About 21 seconds. So a dog, a person, a cow, a blue whale all take about 21 seconds to empty their bladders. Story 33. During the battle between HMS Hood and the Bismarck, as the Hood was sinking, having its bow completely up in the air, the forward turrets fired one last salvo just before sinking, very eerie in a way. Story 34. There was a village in Africa that had very high rate of malaria and mosquito-caused illnesses. In an effort to decrease risk, a group of visiting environmental researchers distributed mosquito nets to the local population. Although there was a measurable decrease in illnesses, there was also a sudden startling decrease in the local fish population. This confused the researchers and led to weeks of speculation and fruitless research. The main theory was that the fish were eating mosquitoes and/or their larvae and suddenly died off without a food source, assuming the mosquitoes were also dying too, without being able to feed as much on the locals. That is, until one day when one of the researchers happened to see the locals out at a nearby lake using the nets to catch fish, something they didn't really do before, resulting in the sudden decrease in the fish population. Story 35. Dolphins self-care by biting off a fish's head, sticking their male body part into the body of the fish, and dragging it along the bottom of the ocean. Male dolphins also group up to harass and violation female dolphins. Story 36. Jupiter's biggest moon, Ganymede, is bigger than the planet Mercury, and its mass is 2 times of our moon. Story 37. Just stumbled upon a quirky tidbit that totally blew my mind. Did you know that honey is like the ultimate shelf-stable food? Seriously, they've unearthed honey pots in Egyptian tombs that are over 3 millennia old, and that stuff is still good. It's all thanks to honey's natural chemistry and low moisture. So next time you're at the store, remember, that jar of honey could outlast us all. Now that's some food for thought. Story 38. Penguins are one of the only higher vertebrate species that are able to store food for prolonged periods of time within themselves. Story 39. Items in stores are priced like 4.99 instead of 5.00 to make the cashier put the money in the till. Story 40. There are genes linked to ADHD and autism in modern humans that are present in every Neanderthal and Denisovan that we've DNA tested so far, which to me implies that at one point, what we call neurodivergence now was the default, and that neurotypicals were the result of a mutation that rapidly became the majority because it was so successful in ensuring the survival of the people who carried it. But I'm not a geneticist. Story 41. There are only a handful countries that do not depict passport, or extremely close equivalent like pass, passport, pass, on the cover of the passport. I think the list is Greece, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia, but I haven't validated it in a few years. Czechia and Slovakia are honorary shouts. At one point, I even wrote to Internal Affairs asking why we don't include it on the cover, but received legal balderdash as a response. Story 42. When I talk to my ex, I break out in hives. I don't ever think about her on a daily or monthly basis, like twice a year. No contact between us. Hives. Phone. Text. In person. Hives. Gone about a day later. Story 43. The eagle lives to 70 years. At age 40, his beak is now too soft to eat, his talons are unable to catch prey, and his feathers are too heavy for him to fly well. He goes off to the highest mountain and starts to grind his beak against stone until it is worn down. He waits until a new beak has grown, and then he pulls out his talons and feathers. When all these have grown back, he is renewed and reborn. Story 44. Shakespeare made a lot of words like a lot. He made the words swagger, laughable, anchovy, skim milk, exist, and a lot more. Story 45. The smell of Play-Doh is copyrighted. It is made out of sweet vanilla extra car, cherry, and salty dough, if I'm not wrong. So technically, selling something that is close to Play-Doh smell will get you in legal issues with said company, XD. Story 46. All people have hemorrhoids. This little nugget was placed in RTO Day Learned, exactly above this question in my feed. Story 47. The banana flavor in artificial flavoring is what bananas really tasted like before they got sick and died out. Story 48. The sounds of the velociraptors in Jurassic Park are the sounds of turtles' fudge. WTF was Steven Spielberg smoking. Story 49. That the Academy Awards are called the Oscars after Bette Davis named them so, after her husband at the time. Story 50. The logo for Mitsubishi Cars, Mitsubishi Group, is an airplane propeller from their early production of aircraft, especially known for the Mitsubishi Zero during WOTUS. Story 51. That if a man's bladder contracted as powerfully as a woman's uterus during birth, he could piss across the River Thames. Story 52. I am known to many as a human being living on a round ball. Scary stuff coming up. That's floating in space, and we all call this Earth. There are just over 8 billion other human beings. Sadly, some of those are only pretending. Story 53. Opera tenor Luciano Pavarotti adopted the practice of carrying a white handkerchief on stage early in his career at a performance in Kansas City, MO. Story 54. Oranges are not a plant that grows in the wild. They are a cross between tangerines and pomelos. They are only orange in moderate climates. In tropical climates, they remain green even when ripe. Story 55. Random number generators in computers are typically pseudo-random number generators. It turns out generating truly random numbers is very difficult. True random number generators exist, but are only used in mainly cryptography and other scientific applications. Story 56. Olympus Mons on Mars is the tallest mountain in the solar system. It's so tall that if you're standing at the base, you can't see the summit due to the planet's curvature. It's over the horizon from your perspective. Story 57. That common Western medical wisdom held that the womb is sterile until about the past decade. Turns out it has its own complex microbiome that would arguably have an important role in fetal development. Story 58. Jupiter is about 380 times the size of the Earth. Here is the fun part. I'm 22 and I have known this fact for about 15 years. Heard on TV, and I can't remember if it was on National Geographic or Discovery Channel. Story 59. If you cut the head off a cockroach, it doesn't die because it has no head. It starves to passing because it can't eat without a mouth. Story 60. From 2002 to 2006, the Land Rover Range Rover was powered by BMW engines, namely their 3.0-liter M57 straight-six turbo diesel and the 4.4-liter M62 petrol V8. Story 61. The opening artillery salvo of the Third Battle of Ypres in 1917 was 4.5 million shells in 2 weeks. If you want to count to 4.5 million in 2 weeks, you're counting to 4 every second for 2 weeks. Story 62. The recurrent laryngeal nerve is a nerve used to control muscles within the larynx. It, for some reason, doesn't just go from the brain to the larynx, but instead travels down the spine and loops under the aorta before traveling back up the neck to the larynx. Giraffes also have this nerve, and it can grow up to about 5 meters long. Story 63. The biggest movies of the 3 years 2001, 2002, and 2003 all had the third movie in their series released in 2007, Shrek 2001, Spider-Man 2002, Pirates of the Caribbean 2003. Story 64. A regiment of horse captured an entire fleet of ships with no casualties. They rowed up to each ship and took all on board prisoner. Granted, the ships were frozen in a winter storm, and the solid ice made it easy for the horsemen. It has been the only known documented military event of this kind. Then the Ukraine-Russo War happened, and we saw a similar incident play out. A nation, Ukraine, with no navy sank the capital ship of a nation with a navy, Russia, and achieved de facto navy dominance of the Black Sea. Story 65. During the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894-1895, China didn't have a modern army. Things were still governed by tradition and honor, so at one point there were two mandarins who wanted the honor of storing a piece of field artillery, and neither didn't want to grant it to the other, so they decided to both store half of it. I assume one got the barrel and the other the block or something. Very useful when it was actually needed for their defense. Story 66. You can gender a hermit crab by holding them in the air a bit, looking at their underside and seeing if they have 2 dots. If they do, she's a girly. Story 67. One of the Russian words for railway station is pronounced Vauxhall. This is because the Russian engineers visited Vauxhall Station in London before they built a rail network and mistook the place name Vauxhall for the word for a railway station. Story 68. Female dolphins can prevent unwanted fertilization. Their female body part complexly evolved, and they can choose if they want to be pregnant or not by simply moving themselves. Story 69. The former dictator of Turkmenistan had a fable for naming shoot. He named himself Turkmenbashi, head of Turkmenistan, then named 2 cities after himself, an airport, a comet, sort of melons, and the month of January. He also named a city after his mother, changed the word for bread to her name, and named April after her. Her name was Gurbandolton, by the way. Then he wrote a book, the Runama, made it mandatory to know it to become your driver's license, send one to space so aliens can read it, declared it to be holy besides the Koran, and stated he personally made a deal with God, that everybody who read it 3 times comes to heaven. He also named the month of September after it. He is, by the way, the only thing I know from Turkmenistan. Story 70. There's a bridge that connects Staten Island to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, called the Outer Bridge Crossing. It is arguably New York City and New York State's outermost bridge. It was named after Eugenius Harvey Outerbridge. Story 71. Due to Leap Day, John Adams served 1 fewer day than any other one-term president. Full. There was no Leap Day in 1800. McKinley was in his first term after not having Leap Day in 1900, but his days in office during his second term were cut short because he was busy getting takedown. FDR was president when Inauguration Day moved from March to January, but he also died in his 4th term. Story 72. Penguins have knees, but over time they stiffened, and penguins today can't use them and have to wobble around. But the knees are still there. Story 73. Recorded history didn't begin until around 3200 BC, meaning some wild stuff could have happened that we'll likely never know about. Story 74. The Outer Bridge Crossing, a bridge that connects New Jersey with Staten Island, NY, is named after the first chairman of the Port Authority of NY, Eugenius Outerbridge. Story 75. Stewardesses is the longest word you can write with your left hand while having it placed in a neutral position on a normal keyboard. Try it. Story 76. There's a parasite that makes fish get caught. The parasite lives in their eyeballs, and once it's mature, it changes the fish's behavior so it will get caught by a heron, etc. This is so it can continue its life cycle in a warm-blooded animal. There's also a parasite that causes mice to lose their fear of cats. Again, this is so it can continue its life cycle in the cat. Story 77. Cichlid fish are some of the only fish that, for most species, do not actually try to eat their babies. Story 78. The substance's Ritalin was named after a pharmacist working for Novartis and made the dog for his deeply depressed wife. Later on, Novartis saw Miney in it. The name of the pharmacist's wife was Rita, so that is where the Ritalin comes from. Story 79. The reason the U.S. emergency number is 911 is because of rotary phones. It's a number that is very hard to misdial on a rotary phone, as you have to do the second longest dial followed by the two shortest dials, but also fast to dial when every second counts. Story 80. Strawberries would not have turned into the popular crop it is today if America did not have an excess of tear gas left over from WWI. Strawberries were not viable as a crop because their roots were highly susceptible to a fungus that eliminates the plant. You had to grow a lot of plants only to harvest small amounts of berries. After WWI, the US had a huge stockpile of tear gas that was never used, and they wanted to get rid of it before it became a problem. They gave the gas away to anyone for experimenting with another use for it. It turned out that the gas was a great fungicide and large amounts of berries could now be grown. Story 81. The brand of sparkling and still canned water, Liquid Passing, was threatened with legal action for their Arnold Palmer drink called Armless Palmer. In an act of lovely malicious compliance, Liquid Passing changed the drink's name to Dead Billionaire. Story 82. There was a president in the Dominican Republic, Antonio Guzman, who committed tragic end, and the reason he didn't receive any help was because his best friend said, and I quote, "Guzman basically invented anti-depression." Story 83. Canadian Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King believed in supernatural activity and claimed to have communicated with the spirit of Leonardo da Vinci, among others. Story 84. Between the 13th and 17th centuries in what is modern Thailand, Myanmar, and that area of Southeast Asia, it was customary for rival generals to duel 1v1 on war elephants. Story 85. In general, twice around your wrist is once around your neck. Twice around your neck is once around your waist. The distance between your wrist and elbow is the length of your foot. You are as tall as your arm span from middle fingertip to middle fingertip. Story 86. I don't know if this counts, but my cat, I don't know about other cats, likes to eat goldfish crackers a lot. Story 87. People such as researchers and pest control that do lots of work with cockroaches often develop allergies and sensitivities to cockroaches and prepackaged ground coffee. Story 88. Official art of an item from Earthbound, the Sound Stone. It apparently has an XCX mark on it. Only recently learned this. I'd say the implications fascinate me, but there's no real connection between this and its prequel.